smell and teeth.
The fuck was that?
Well, that was the intro.
Paid 50 quid for that. God, Fiverr's getting worse, isn't it?
Never mind how much we spent on Fiverr. Today, I want to talk to you about analogue and digital. And is it worth using analogue?
Oh, that old chestnut. Is it worth using analogue?
Yeah, I want to know what the benefits are.
Sounds better.
Well, is there any benefits?
Well, yeah, I personally think there's thousands of benefits to using hardware. I mean, the thing is, you always get people who can only afford software complaining that hardware's no good, yet you get the people who can afford hardware who buy the hardware. I mean, if I could sell half the studio and just use software, I probably would.
Seriously?
Well, yeah, why not? I mean, if I sold all the hardware in the studio, I could go out and buy a really nice car or a house.
Well, that is true, I suppose. So, why do you keep the hardware?
I know the argument, everyone's heard the argument before that hardware sounds better just because it's hardware. It sounds more open. It sounds, when you run something through hardware, it seems to have an extra width and dimension to it that you can't get through software. Now, I'm not saying that hardware is better than software. I think software is just as good, or close to anyway. I won't say it's as good as hardware.
Well, I mean, if it's as good, why have we got it?
Yeah, no, but you hear the argument that, oh, well, software sounds like hardware, it's really good, but you never hear, well, the hardware sounds like software. It's always the software trying to sound like the hardware, and that's because professionals know that hardware does sound better. But saying that, I'm not saying that you can't write a piece of music in software, because you can release it.
Yeah.
But if you give an engineer the software and the hardware, and you ask him to do the same track, I can guarantee you the hardware will just sound better.
So, what is the difference then between the two? How do what's the gummins inside that makes them different?
Oh, now you're asking me. I've got no idea.
Is it just magical?
Yes, it's magic.
Well, that's how you're making it sound. It's just some magical thing that happens.
No, I'm not saying it's magical. I'm sure there is a definite explanation, but I don't think any engineer can pinpoint what it is. There is something about hardware. There is something about its sound that is different to software, that software doesn't quite capture. Now, whether that's yet or whether it'll ever capture it is another discussion altogether.
Do you think it's as a producer develops their listening that enables them to hear the difference between the software and the hardware?
Yeah, I mean, that does play a part. I mean, I've had clients here who I've run things through the UAD API 2500, which is a really nice piece of software. But then at the same time, I've run it through our actual API 2500, and every single one of them has listened to that piece of gear and said, the hardware just sounds better.
So do you think sometimes we say to ourselves, well, the software's as good because we, first of all, haven't got access to the hardware, and secondly, have never heard it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like anything, innit? If you can't afford it, then it's rubbish.
Yeah.
If you can afford it, then, well, it's great. But the fact is, I can't think of many people who can afford hardware who don't have the hardware.
That's quite interesting then, that not only just because of the money that they're able to then spend, but the fact that you can actually massively hear the difference in the tracks.
I wouldn't say it's massive. I mean, it's not night and day, but there is something about that. There's an openness in hardware that you cannot get in software. I mean, I know a lot of people think summing mixers are like this snake oil, but it's not true. I mean, you actually listen to a summing mixer, a good summing mixer with a good engineer, and it sounds phenomenally better than the replications we've got of summing gear like the Waves NLS or something like that.
Okay, so my understanding is that the digital, the software that we have, takes a sample rate from a sound and runs it through the plugin. Is that correct?
No.
Then what is it? How does it work? Maybe you could give us a really nice explanation.
Well, I'm not a software engineer, so I can't tell you exactly. But for me, this is like the argument over CD versus vinyl. Vinyl's making a comeback. Vinyl sounds worse. People say it sounds warmer. Well, no, it doesn't. Vinyl has a reduced bass end and a reduced high end, because if vinyl had a lot of high end, the needle wouldn't fit in the groove. If it had a lot of low end, the needle would bounce out of the groove. So vinyl is a restricted bandwidth. So we can say that actually we prefer vinyl because it sounds worse.
Do you think then maybe it's the fact that the human ear enjoys the variation of the sound? So if we use the plugins, they are very repetitive. They do the same thing. Whether I use well, not if I, but if two people the same skill used a plugin, they would get the same result possibly. Whereas if the same two people each owned a different piece of hardware, their end result might be slightly differently because of the tubes and the different all the different gummins inside the hardware operates differently in each piece of hardware. Is that the attraction? Like, so that, you know, again, like vinyl, my record might sound slightly different than your piece of vinyl because you might have played it more than me, or that kind of thing. Do you think that's what maybe the ear likes that?
I think perhaps we don't like perfection as much as we think we like it. I don't think it's the fact that every single piece of hardware sounds different. Because, I mean, saying that, a lot of hardware does sound different. I've got a Manley Massive Passive that sounds very different to a friend's Massive Passive. But at the same time, I think there is something going on. Now, whether this is converters, whether this, as I say, the cable is, something is different. And I think the ear prefers imperfection to perfection. And I think the problem we have is digital is too perfect. And I think people are kind of listening to digital, something that is done completely in the door. And it sounds fine, but if you take that same track that's gone through hardware with the same engineer, so you can't blame the different engineers, there is something better about a piece of hardware. There is something that sounds different, more open, wider, warmer. I can't put my finger on it. I don't think any engineer can put the finger on it. But there is definitely a difference. You know, tell me now, if you could afford hardware, you're going to say that you wouldn't buy it. I mean, somebody said, here's a studio full of hardware, or here's a door full of software, which do you want? Well, I can guarantee that most people will say, well, I'll take the studio full of hardware, and it won't be to sell it.
Well, no, because is it as well then that as engineers, we enjoy the moving away from a computer screen and actually, you know, playing with the knobs?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I think it's very hands-on. I think there's something about moving away from a screen and moving to more hands-on stuff. And I think manufacturers now are starting to twist away from the software. If we look at people like Steinberg, they're creating now hardware versions of their software plugins. So we're getting a complete reversal now, because I think people want to get more hands-on with what they're doing, because a mouse isn't a musical instrument.
So you're not just a collector then? You don't see yourself as just a collector of hardware?
No. I'll only buy hardware. I mean, I sell hardware that I think shit, so I'm not collecting it, but I will collect pieces of hardware that sound really, really good. And I think the problem is that a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, you can do it in software. Why do it in hardware? It's quicker in software. Since when is artistry about doing it as fast as you can, or as fast as you can possibly do it? It's not. Artistry and creativity is about doing the best you can no matter how long it takes. So I would much rather play with an Akai sampler or say an SPL twin tube or any of the hardware. It may take me a couple of hours longer, but it's my ears. I'm sending something out to those people that I like, and that's what it's about. It's not about knocking a track out as quickly as you can and just thinking, well, screw it, people might like it, and I hope they do. It's a case of what you love. You're doing what you love. You've got to be crazy to do this, and if you're not crazy or you don't love it, then you're not going to do it. You're just doing it for completely the wrong reasons, and you'll fade out.
So do you think maybe having the hardware then also makes you more creative? That adds more into the music?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've heard a lot of music. I mean, well, you know, we've been sent an awful lot of mixes, and you can generally tell who's been working entirely in software and who's had their hands on a piece of hardware, not only from the slight difference in sound, but also from the creative aspect. And I think the problem is now that DAWs are taking away our creativity and turn us into technical people. We sit there, moving a mouse, looking at the screen. Now, when you do something like that, your hand is doing one thing, and your eyes are looking at something else. That's a technical aspect. Whereas if you're using a piece of hardware, you are looking at what you are touching and you are listening. And I think that there's going to be a revolution eventually, same as the software revolution came along. I think there's going to be another revolution where hardware becomes a major role again, where we become hybrid studios, where people don't like software only and people don't like hardware only. We hybrid between the two.
Which is quite interesting, really, especially seeing as we specialise mostly in electronic music. But we use a lot of hardware.
Well, yeah, we do. I mean, the thing is, we're not having any complaints about our mixes, have we, that have gone through hardware? They've all come back and loved it. But then again, when we look at the beginnings of dance music, it all started with the TB303, the TR-808, the TR-909. These were all hardware instruments. The Juno 106, the Casio CZ1000s, all the classic sounds and the sounds of house music from the Akai samplers. These are all hardware instruments. And I'm not dissing software. I'm not attacking a piece of software. Hardware makes us think differently. It makes us more creative. And
I think a different part of the brain.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the problem is that we're sacrificing our creativity by using just software. We sacrifice an awful lot. I was watching one of our engineers the other day, Tom, and he was sat on the door and he's messing around and he actually opened a tape emulation. And it's a cassette tape emulation. I'm not on about our Atari or anything like that. I'm on about a tape emulation, a cassette tape emulation. He opened that and said, I want to put some tape on it. And it's like, well, we've got a tape machine there. Why don't you feed it out to that? And he's like, oh, well, it's quicker in the door. And he's like, this isn't about speed. Why are you using an emulation? Why not? Everyone can afford a tape machine, for crying out loud. Why not just feed it out to a tape machine? I mean, I still do a drum loop, record it to a tape machine, and then play it back and use that as the parallel processing, because you get that warmth and that something from a tape machine, and it's a sound from my tape machine that nobody else is going to have. And I've not spent thousands on it. It's like a £40 Tascam piece of crap, but it still does something. And then people get hold of me and go, how did you get that sound? What plugin did you use? Well, I used a fucking tape machine over there. That crappy thing there with some crappy tape in it that I've used for years.
So really, at the end of the day, it's possibly the fact that people don't listen when they're first starting out as much when they're producers, and also they think everything has to be done in a rush, and they've lost the fact that, like you said, it's an art, it's fun. We're meant to enjoy it.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the main problems is, as well as all these guys, these not producers, but the kind of well-being guys, mental fitness guys, are saying, oh, you must write as many tracks as you possibly can. Now, I understand the theory behind that. I understand that the more tracks you write, the better you're going to get, and you pick out your best to release. I mean, if you look at Thriller, and when they recorded that, I think they recorded about 200 tracks or something silly like that. So I can understand their theory of saying that, but at the same time, it also puts this anticipation of rush into us. Because I think a lot of people getting into music today think that, well, all I've got to do is write one hit and I'll never have to work again. And this is the wrong attitude. It's not about, I've only got to write one hit and I'll never have to work again. It should be the attitude of, I'm doing this because I love it. I have a passion for this. And if it does well, fantastic. If it doesn't, who gives a shit? And I think we've lost that, and it's now become this race to, I've got to finish a track, I've got to finish a track, I've got to finish a track. So nobody's willing to go out to hardware. And when you do go out to hardware, they laugh at you and say, well, I could do that in my sampler in 10 seconds in software, where it's taking you hours in your hardware. It's like, well, yeah, but who's having more fun? I'm having more fun going through this sampler. I'm enjoying myself. I've got physical contact with something there. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing, whereas they're just pushing buttons on a mouse and going, oh, well, I did it faster than you. Why does it matter how fast I do it?
I think as well, it's partly the style of life that we lead, where we live in, say, smaller houses, we do in the UK, than we've ever lived in before, in tiny little boxes. So we don't necessarily have that spare room anymore to convert into a home studio. We lead these lifestyles where we're racing off to different locations. So we believe we can just do everything in our Mac.
Oh, well, we can. I'm not denying that you can do it in a Mac or a laptop or anything. You can do that. But the problem is, everyone treats it as a race. Oh, well, I wrote this track in 3 days. I don't give a fuck if you wrote it in 10 weeks. Do you know what I mean? What matters is the end result. Joe Public isn't going to sit and listen to it and go, oh, he wrote that in a week. Oh, it's a fantastic track. They're going to listen to it.
I think I'd like to just stick with the hardware. I like the hardware sound.
I do as well. It always makes me laugh when you see these adverts where you see like a £60,000 mixing desk and they've got a MacBook on it with a couple of plugins open. And the advertisement is, look, he uses plugins. It's like, yeah, he's using plugins while he's getting paid by this company, but I can guarantee you 100%, if you've got a 60 grand mixing desk, you're mixing on that 60 grand mixing desk. You're not mixing on a couple of fucking plugins. They're just ridiculous adverts selling ideas of, oh, well, they do it all in software. You wouldn't sit surrounded by a room full of equipment if you could do it all in software, if it sounded as good in software, which unfortunately, it's not caught up yet, the software.
Well, if you start looking at the second-hand market now of the old samplers, it really has started to go up. So there must be something. People must feel some attraction to them to want to buy them in the second-hand market.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, it's coming to the point now, it's coming to a head where old equipment is starting to increase in price because more and more people are realising the value of getting an old piece of gear. Because one of the problems I think we face today as well is that these manufacturers rehash shit. Like, Behringer have just released the TD03 or something, and you've got Roland releasing the TB3 and all. They're rehashing old gear. And what they don't realise is that back then, these artists were using this old gear because it was cheap. It was the cheapest thing they could get their hands on. That's why they were using it. So you using it isn't going to mean you're as good as them. So today we should be grabbing the cheap gear on eBay and writing music using that cheap gear, making the best of it, making it our own. That's what they did back then. They didn't say, oh, well, I'm only going to use a TB3 or 3 because Derek May uses one. They use one because it's like, well, 20 quid in a second-hand shop. I'll have that and I'll give it a go.
So it's the challenge as well. The fact that we're getting something old that might not work and might not do everything that we want it to do. I mean, sometimes we press buttons on some of the, you might get an old second-hand sampler and you think, yeah, it seems to work. Start to use it, press a couple of buttons and some bits don't work. But then that challenges us to use what is usable on it.
Well, yeah, again, it's restriction, isn't it? The problem we've got today as well is loads of plugins everywhere. You're not restricted in any way. And when you're not restricted in any way, you can't be creative. Creativity is born from having to work around things. So yeah, buying a broken sampler is great because it means you can do limited things with it. You've got to be more creative with it. I mean, I keep telling people who come to the studio for training sessions, dump half of that fucking software because you're not going to use it. All you're doing is open it up, and when it comes to picking a plugin, they're like, oh, well, which one do I pick? Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. It shouldn't be that. It should be a case of, these are the only plugins I have. I will write a track with them and I will write something fucking great.
So really you're saying as well that, so you use your hardware on your tracks if you've got hardware and access to it. And even if you haven't, still limit the number of plugins that you're using.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. We have far too many plugins. I mean, this is why those people who go to dodgy sites and download dodgy software are the ones that generally produce the least music because they spend all the time organising the stolen software rather than actually getting down and writing a piece of music. Just get the necessities. If you can't write a piece of music with just the necessities of plugins, you've got a problem. You can't write music. It's that simple. I mean, manufacturers will always sell you some other story of, oh, well, you need our hardware to do this or our hardware to do that or our software to do this and it'll make this easier. Of course they will, because otherwise how are they going to sell it to you? And you need to come over that hurdle that the problem isn't the equipment you're using, it's you.
So maybe we need to all be a little more creative with what we've got, use less, and actually enjoy what we're doing and spend a bit longer doing it.
Yeah, fucking right, yeah. Make it more of a passion, make it more of something that you are doing for the love of it, rather than for the girls, the money, the fame, some sort of... I blame social media for part of this. A lot of people are producers now because they just want to post on Facebook saying, I'm a producer. Look what I've done, listen to this drum loop.
Well, it's the old dinner party sort of thing, isn't it? Where people would, dinner parties and this is the car I've got sat outside on my drive. Now instead they have people over for dinner, the mates over for a meal, and oh yeah, that corner's where I produce music.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's more about being cool now, being a producer. I mean, I remember when everyone wanted to be a DJ. I mean, when I first started being a producer, it was considered geekish and nobody wanted to do it. It's really cheesy. But now it's cool. Just like DJing was cool, it's now cool to be a DJ and a producer. So everybody wants to do it just to seem cool to everybody. And they're all doing it for the wrong fucking reasons. If you're going to write music, write it because you have a passion for writing it. And you don't care what everybody else thinks. But today I get so many emails saying, how do I sound like him? How do I sound like him? Well, be him. Because if you're not him, you're never going to fucking sound like him. Just do what you do. If somebody likes it, great. If somebody doesn't like it, well,
make another track.
Yeah, go again.
and see what happens.
Mm.
Right. I think we need to like tell people then just go and enjoy their music and make music.
Well, I think we need to tell people to stop pissing about stealing software and stop pissing about trying to do it for fame. If you're not doing it for the right reasons, you'll quit, and all you're doing is wasting your money and your time.
Pretty serious thoughts then.
Indeed.
All I asked was, do we go hardware or software?
Well, yeah. So if you're going to complain, fuck off.